Hello, welcome to Country Stitchers. This is a demonstration video. We have two demonstration videos that we've done prior to this. One of them was on punch needle, and the other one was on cord making. We used a LNSs battery operated cord maker, and Deb and I spent some time making different types of cords using different fibers so that you could get acquainted with that. You might have just heard Ivan. He may come in a minute. Ivan's my service dog, and I'm doing this particular demonstration video in my craft room, and Ivan comes and goes, so you may hear his little feet here at some point. As we start this video though, I wanted to just mention that the tool we're going to be looking at, come on in, is made by Clover. And we have used this as one of our gadgets in Gadget Corner, and we're going to familiarize you with this in today's video. And there are so many different ways to make tassels. I used to make it using a card, a very stiff card of different sizes for different lengths to my tassel. And I'm not even going to go into that technique today. So just know that if you choose to watch this video, it is going to focus on using this Clover Tassel Maker. There'll be other ideas that I had that I will talk about along the way. So hopefully there's something that you can take away from this and use in your needlework efforts. There is an article I'd like to share some points with you, written by Debbie Novak, and it's from a magazine produced by the Historic Needlework Guild, and it's called FineLines. This issue that I took this article from, or that I'm going to share with you from this article, goes back, oh gosh, prior to 1998. So they were looking at tassels quite a while ago. In her article, Debbie says, "Recently I've seen scissor, curtain, and lamp tassels, tassels on shoes and boots, pocketbook tassels as a closure, even the headgear of the circus elephants. In all honesty, the more I look for them, the more I see." I have to agree now. You'll see even Clover shows them on different bags here in their advertisement for their product. Necklaces. I've seen them on very upscale, high street furnishings, on lampshades. I've seen them on pillows. They're just countless numbers of ways people are using them. They date back as far as Egyptian royal tomb paintings. Some of them were dated 1900 BC, where a Phoenician prince was draped with tasseled cords and shown in this picture offering gifts to an Egyptian king. Another source in the Egyptian time period, 1300 BC, showed tassels as pillow embellishments. Tassels have been used in religion. They were mentioned in the New Testament. They are used as an indicator of rank in the Catholic faith. Moses wore tassels as prescribed by the Jewish law. So even the Jewish prayer shawls have tassels on the corners. Native Indian rituals use tassels. Tassels are part of military uniforms. They even are thought to ward off evil spirits in Eastern cultures. And students move their tassel at graduation time from one side of their graduation hat to the other as a rite of passage. So you can go back a long way to find the evidence of tassels. In the Middle Ages, women wore them to indicate their status. They used them on cloaks or mantles to fasten them at the neck. Those were called tassius. It's a Latin word and it means clasp. And the tassel actually tipped the cords that were pulled together to tie the garments. They're shown in the Bayeux Tapestry, We referenced the Bayou Tapestry and did a small segment on that. That goes back a long way. The French formed a guild for the express purpose of producing passementerie. I do not know how to pronounce that in French, and I know that wasn't probably correct, but I will show you the information here. This is from Wikipedia, and it's the braid, gold or silver cord, embroidery, silk or beads for clothing or furnishings. All of that together make the elaborate trimmings, but every part of that includes the tassel, fringes, cords, all of it. And then in the Industrial Revolution, tassels were made more affordable and the middle classes started to use them. I know that I was at a hotel doing recruitment for physicians one time. It was the Greenbrier, and they had tassels everywhere. If my mind serves me well, they were on lamps, they were on lamp shades, they were on tablecloths. It was very elegant, truly was. And of course the tassels ranged in size and they ranged in composition. The fibers were all different. I know you'll see tassels on blankets. I was just going to say, I was trying to remember if my horse's blanket that I wore in show ever had tassels on it. I don't believe it did. I don't think mine did. That's not to say some don't, but mine didn't. So I want to thank Debbie Novak for her article. It was called Tassels, A Short History. And there are 2 references in her article at the conclusion about tassels. And I will put those in the description box in case anyone wants to look up those 2 books that go into more detail. Like needlework and all facets of needlework, most of what we're going to talk about in terms of tassels comes down to personal preference. I spent, this probably is about 7 hours now, on this issue of tassels, only because as I looked at the tassels, I continued to come up with more and more ideas about what I wanted to try, and every time I thought I had it nailed down, I came up with another idea. So I finally had to just draw a line in the sand and say, this is fine, people can play with it on their own. But I think once you know what the purpose of your tassel is, then you kind of work backward from that to decide how it wants to be used, whether it's going to be an accent for something, whether it's going to be the main focus of something. How do you want to accent your tassel? Do you want to put something else with it? Do you want to put on a charm? Do you want to put on beads? What's the texture of your tassel going to be? Will it be cotton? Will it be rayon? Will it be small fibers? Will it be really bulky fibers and give you a really large tassel? And then, of course, the color. Let's look at the ones I have laying here, and then we'll come back and visit the how-tos. There are a couple components to this video that I'm going to do on a medium that is not actually the tassel itself because it's very hard to see. So I've come up with other ways to demonstrate that portion of the tassel making for you. Most of these are made using basic DMC floss. This is DMC floss right off the skein, and I used just a piece of floss at the top of the tassel so that it can be hung from something. Same thing with this one. And the difference in size is the number of times I wrapped the gadget before I made it, and then how I set it for length. This one was a lot of fun. It was made from variegated pearl cotton. Number 8 pearl cotton, DMC. And I like blue, if you don't know that. That's one of my favorite colors. And I thought this would be pretty. And I like the way that the twisted threads show up. I did use yellow because in my kitchen I have blue and white toile for decoration, and I thought that the yellow accent, that sort of French yellow accent, would be pretty, so I might have this in my kitchen. I played with this one. This was fun. I hope to be able to use it on an ornament this Christmas. This again is just DMC floss. Then I finger braided a piece of cord and I tied it around the neck of the tassel, and from that I hung a little reindeer that I happened to have found at a thrift store in the jewelry department. And then I finger braided this cord. I said finger braided, that's not exactly right. I finger crocheted this cord. And I really like the effect. I like the look of that at the top. It's kind of a rich look to the tassel, as opposed to just a straight strand of floss. And of course you can vary this. Even, you'll see in a moment, getting around to the other way, I made the tassel using my laces cord maker to make the cord for the top as well. This one was real simple, but I did it a little differently. I wanted to see what would happen to the head of the tassel if I tied the tassel 2 different directions. In other words, not only did I wrap it top to bottom on the Clover Tassel Maker, but then I wrapped it side to side, and then I tied it both directions to make a more rounded head on the tassel itself and make it a little bit bulkier in the middle. And then I put a little bell on it. I thought that might be cute at Christmas time as well. Now let's see where to go from there. I wanted to look and see what effect I would have to do, or what I would have to do to the tassel making to give it the effect, I should say, of a really fine thread at the bottom. So the first thing that came to mind would be to take this DMC floss that I used on all of these tassels and strand it first. And when I did that, that was exactly the look that it gave. It was very fine. And this is what I think of when I think of those tassels that hang around a necklace or from earrings. I think of this really fine tassel at the bottom. And again, that effect was gotten by stranding the floss before I tied it. The same is true of these 2 purple tassels. They've been stranded, and that's just 2 complementary colors of purple. And then I used finger cord at the top, finger crochet cord at the top to give me something to anchor them to. And I thought those might be cute as a pair of earrings. And then I had a little smaller one that I actually put on an earring finding just to show what that looked like. I kind of like that. Then this one takes us to another dimension. And this is made with flower thread, which, as you know, you don't strand flower thread, you use it just as it is off the skeins. And that's very fine as well, but it's a lot easier to use because it's already in that condition. You don't have to do anything to it. This is another one. This tassel was done using DMC wool. It comes off the skein just like this. It's got a twisted look to it. The only thing about this, though, is that it does tear. It separates very easily. So while you're creating with it, you have to be cautious that you don't have it against anything sharp when you're wrapping, and that when you tie it off carefully. And then I used just the actual wool itself to anchor it to this finding, but I am going to reinforce this with some invisible thread and take it down through the top of the tassel and back around the finding to just make that more secure, because that will wear right through there based on my experience with the wool, the fiber. Look at that, it doesn't want to go away. Okay, these two, I was thinking of my ornaments, my pillows that I'm going to do finish, that are in my finishing, I should say, that are fall, and I thought these might be cute hanging off the bottom of some of them. So I played with that. I just twisted this in my fingers and used it as the top of this tassel. I haven't done anything ornamental to it. I could put beads on it. I could put a little pumpkin on it. And again, same thing. This is just how it comes off the skein. This is pearl cotton number 5. And then I just attached a loop to the top for those. And then I mentioned there was another tassel I was going to show you that got a little more ornamental. This is the laces cord I made to match the tassel itself. I did not strand this tassel. This is just off the skein DMC. Now, you could finish this very easily with some beads. Make it look really pretty. I'll show you one that I have done that way. I have 2 fobs here. I'll show you both of them. This fob, I just have a little beaded chain at the top. This is a Circa and Company needlepoint fob. And then I made this out of DMC, again off the skein, but I put a little collar of beads around it. They're Delica beads, and I finished it with a finding so I could attach it to the bottom of the fob. So there's that one. And then the partner to this one, there was a bin of kits, and I just couldn't decide, and they were all for sale when we were up at Silver Needle, so I got these two. This one is an ice cream cone. Again, I did sort of a little ladder of beads. And then similar DMC off the skein tassel. And I put a collar of beads around that one. And I used a finding at that one to attach it to. So the only difference is I made this one just a skosh shorter than this one. And I kind of like both looks. And I like them the way they are. I mean, I intended to make this one longer than this one, and I do like that. I think they look good that way. So, there's 2 that I have actually put to use already, and both of them made similarly. Hang those back up, and then let's take a look at our Tassel Maker. There's a couple things to note about it. Instructions are very well written. They're contained inside when you get your Tassel Maker. It's all packaged nice and tight. That's the side that you look at when you're working. This is the front. These loosen the 2 screws on the sides so that you can actually slide and resize. There's 3 possible adjusted sizes. This is the smallest. You wrap it bottom to top, top to bottom, this way. That's smallest. On the side, you'll notice there's some little markings. That would be the smallest. Marking size, make sure that you have it at the right setting. The center is, again, the middle size. You line up these 2 markings on the side, and then the final size, fully extended, you would have the last one lined up, and then you tighten them down. Both sides. have the same markings. And that would be the full length for that tassel. Now, having shown you that, when you load your Tassel Maker, you loosen this a little bit, you slide your floss between the top plate and the bottom plate, and then you screw it back down so that it secures it. Then you do your wrapping, and then you secure the other side under this bolt. When you're getting ready to then secure your tassel, you want to secure it in the middle. That makes the very top of your tassel where you secure your threads together. So you want it to be direct center on your tassel. To do that, you follow the arrows on both sides, and you want to make sure that you are tying your thread around your tassel threads at the center of your Tassel Maker. So while I have it in its fully extended position, the actual marker is on the side of this nut and on the inside of this nut. You can just barely see the tips, but that is your center marker. If I was doing it in the middle and using the middle setting for size, I'll show you how that adjusts. You go to the middle setting, and now you'll notice, and you can probably just see it by looking at the markers, that the middle arrow is now in the center of your tassel lengths, and that would be where you would secure your threads. And then if I were to compress this to its smallest size, then I would be looking at the smallest arrow, and they would then be lined up across from each other once I compress this. So those are the only indicators on this for you to follow. Once you have wrapped your tassel, the next step involves securing them in the middle very tightly. Then you remove it from the Tassel Maker by running your scissor under the tassel threads in this already created groove for your scissor to follow. It's really nice. You simply slide your scissor in, go across, cut your tassel threads. And then I make sure I hold it in the center so that I can just flip this little gadget over and then come back through the other side and do the same thing. Then you're through with your Tassel Maker, and the other steps that we will look at are done in your hand. One of them is going to be very difficult to see apart from my hands in the way, so we're going to use a pencil for me to demonstrate how you secure the neck of the tassel once you've removed it from this gadget. So let's clear out my goodies here. And then let me show you how this Clover Tassel Maker actually works. You'll want to have a nice sharp pair of scissors. I use some of my embroidery scissors. Oh, one last thing I wanted to show you. I purchased these at the store before I made my own tassels, long time ago, and I got them to go on a needlepoint fob. I'm making two other fobs. One is a fob that has little quail heads all the way around it, and the other one has lobsters on it. And these three I'd purchased at the beads shop. They're made of a rayon thread, and I just wanted to show you that because the thought occurred to me that I might use my rayon threads as well. So I got out a skein of rayon, which is now referred to as satin by DMC, and I wrapped my gadget with it, and I will not use it again, I'll show you the outcome of that effort. There you go. There's my tassel. This, I know there are probably ways to do it, but my time I like to enjoy and don't like it to be work when I'm playing in my craft room. So what happens with this is that it is so silky to touch that there's no way for the threads that you're trying to secure a purchase with to hang on to each other. So I ended up using a pearl cotton to tie them and remove it from my gadget. But then at that point, as I tried to form my tassel, I just realized this was going to be a monster and I was not going to work on the rest of the tassel creation. So tuck that away. Lessons learned from me: don't use rayon thread. Pearl cotton has a nice sheen to it. So too do some of the Karen wildflower threads, things of that nature. So so I'll find something if I want it to shine in some other type of thread. I'm not going back to my satin or my rayon. Now, let's just take a quick look at wrapping a basic non-stranded tassel. Find my thread, there we go. I cut this and just kind of loosely wrapped it ahead of time so that I didn't end up with a snarled mess as I was trying to create a scissor or a tassel here. I'm going to go ahead and leave it at the center setting because it's easy that way. It already is there. I secure my thread between the two plates, so I just loosened this a tiny bit. I bring my thread up, I secure it, then you begin wrapping. Now, the more you wrap and the more thread you have for your tassel, of course, the larger and bulkier it'll be, the more plump will be your results. I was imagining that using a worsted yarn would also give you a nice bulky finish, and there are all types of fibers in skeins of yarn that might make it a little more practical than using some of the more expensive needlework threads. And I don't know that to be a hard and fast rule. I was just thinking about it, but I haven't investigated it. I know I used to have quite a few different types of fibers that I used for crochet, but I have not priced them in a long time. Okay, so I've secured that on that side. Pull it tight, and I'm going to batten down the hatches. There we go. Now we have our tassel threads, and now at this point, this is where the center becomes critical. For us, it's going to be this center arrow because we didn't want it. I'm going to just use a piece of pearl cotton to demonstrate this. I go behind all the threads. I take a look at the center there. And once I've lined it up with the center, give it a quick eye, and then I pull it nice and tight. Now what I do, I give it a twist, only because it allows me to have the freedom to tie the second knot without somebody else's hand here, and it doesn't slide on me. So I give it another over under. And I am slightly ambidextrous if you're paying attention. You'll notice I like to play with things with both hands. Alright. that's got it lined up right in the center. And then we remove it from the Tassel Maker. And then I turn it over and I hold all the threads together and I give a downward tension. I'm sliding that over just to draw this thread tight. It probably doesn't make a difference, but then I take another pass at those on the other side. These are my 2 anchoring threads. Those can get taken off and tossed. And that's the basic use of the gadget maker for tassels. At this point now, we're going to have to consider how we're going to use this tassel. If I wanted to put a metal finding on it, this would be the time to do that. I could then tie it in right here, and it would already be part of my tassel. I can also sew it onto my tassel later if I want to. I like saving a step. The other thing you can do is you can use the thread that you've tied your tassel threads with, and you can fashion a little loop out of it right at the top, and you can hang it using that. I believe I showed you one that I did similarly. That would be this red one. That's how I fashioned that. And if I was going to use a finger crocheted cord like this, I would have already made it. And I say that because I did try it both ways. I tried it already made and then tying it into my tassel at this point, or I tried putting it through from side to side once I had already completed my tassel. That was very challenging. I know it can be done because I was able to do it, but it was much easier doing it from the start as opposed to adding it on later. So I'm going to go ahead and put 2 loops on here just for the purposes of demonstration. And what I did was I took the cording and I brought it up one way and I brought it up another way so that it shows 2 loops above. Just going to make sure I've got the same tension on those, and then I'm going to secure it down here at the bottom so that after I pull this together, this will be tucked down inside where the fringe is, and you'll never see the knot that I'm doing here. Okay, so I tied that underneath, and I'll work these 2 loops up to the top. There we go. Then, if I was using the same cord to do the neck of my tassel, I would need it now. Once you bring your loops up, then what you want to do is you want to play with your tassel threads. Make sure that they're kind of evenly distributed around the place where you've secured them so that it gives it a little domed effect, makes it look a little bit more round and secure. That little knot needs to be tucked under a little bit. Not that it's actually the right level, but okay. So this is the point at which you would create the neck on your tassel. And again, you would want those threads tucked inside your neck. So at this point, I am not going to demonstrate it here for you. I'm going to use this colored pencil, Pretend this is your tassel, and that the blunt end of the tassel is the rounded end of the tassel we just looked at, where we tied off the threads on our tassel maker. And the pointed end of our pencil is the fringe end of our tassel. So, this being the top, what we want to do is secure the neck of our tassel and all the threads. And to do that, we use a piece of cord. It can be contrasting, like I did with the sort of French looking yellow and blue tassel, or it can be the same color and blend in to your tassel. What's this one? This one's a little darker. I wanted you to be able to see it, so I used a little darker shade of blue-green. I think those are 501, 502, 503 shades. And then here's one that's the same, so it blends in. So you just get the sort of the flow of the tassel fringe as it comes down, gathers at the neck, and then fans out at the bottom. So here's what we're going to do. When you're getting ready to make it, whatever choice you've made for your cording, you create a small loop, and this loop is critical. You want the end of your thread to lay along the loop, so you just run that loop like this along your threads in your tassel, with the loop pointed towards the open end of your fringe and the open end of what you're working with pointed to the top of your tassel. The first thing you're going to do is securely hold the loop between your thumb and your forefinger, and then take your working thread, which is the remainder of this, and you start to wrap that loop around all of the individual tassel threads. Take 2 passes at it, and then slide your fingers down the loop a little bit. Make sure it's flat against the rest of the fringe or tassel threads. Then you want to be sure that now that you've got it started, you pull it very tight. And you can pull the top gently, but pull your working thread again very tight against your tassel. I usually do about 5 rounds with mine. You can do 3, you can do 8, 10, however long you want that effect of the gathering of your tassel neck to look. And once you've gotten those nice and tight, and you want to keep pulling till you know they're secure, it will actually cause an indentation on your threads as you get them drawn tight. You then secure those, hold them securely against your tassel. Take the end of your working thread and pass it through the loop that you created at the beginning by the way you held that thread. Once you have it passed through, hold it securely. Take a hold of the thread at the open end, pull it gently towards the top of your tassel, and you'll see that it's drawing my loop up into the neck that we just created. My working thread went through the loop, and now by pulling the thread at the top of our tassel, we have drawn that loop up to the neck. Now I hold both threads and I pull them both at the same time, and I allow that to creep slowly up under that collar, the loop itself. And now I have secured the neck of my tassel. Again, Make sure it's nice and tight. And then you trim that collar flush with the neck. Now I have secured it. That's the process for closing the neck on your tassel. I would suggest backing up the video and watching that once or twice. It's very simple to do, but you want to get used to the places where you secure it with your fingers and hold it, and then the adjustment to make it nice and tight with the actual fringe itself. So that's the second major step once we've wrapped our threads for the tassel and removed it from the Clover Tassel Maker. Then we create the neck on the tassel. And the next step that we're going to do is to coif our fringe. We're going to give it a haircut. Now, I'm going to take the tassel that we looked at before and imagine we have a neck on here. What we want to look at doing, you'll see that there is a little bit of difference to the edge of these tassels as opposed to the ones that I've already done this next process with. You'll see how evenly those are laying next to each other and how unevenly these are. So I'm going to use, for the purposes of demonstrating this, again because my fingers get in the way, a full skein of floss that I had. I've secured it as though it was tied at the top for a tassel. Use your imagination. Pretend it's been gathered here in the center. I'm going to just tie a thread there to mark the neck on the tassel. Imagine then that this is our actual tassel, and here's the neck of our tassel, and that would be a little bit broader, so we'll just tie that denser, give it a little more of a dimension to it. Okay, so imagining this was done the way we just showed you to do the neck. Now what we want to make sure we get is an even finish at the bottom of our threads. The way we do this is we use paper guides. I cut these just on a piece of paper that looked like graph paper, and I cut them to different sizes. You can see by looking at this piece of paper I have rolled this on and off all of these smaller tassels that I demonstrated and showed you the finish of. I used this. You can use the same piece over and over again until it no longer holds up for you. But for the purposes of this one, I'm going to use the largest scale piece of paper that I have. And what you're going to do is you're going to roll it. I use the neck as my guide, and I use the paper and I tuck it down over the threads very carefully, and then I start rolling it, and then I draw it back against itself to get it tight, and then I continue to roll it. As I'm rolling, I want to make sure that my paper is not telescoping at either end, so that if that were to happen, then you would have a skewed opening at each side, and it wouldn't be flush to be the guide that you're going to cut against. So we know that that's not telescoping, and I've got it drawn tight. And the lines on this help too, because I can roll straight down using the line as a guide, and I know I haven't shifted the paper anywhere in there. So I'm keeping it nice and tight. This is probably longer than it needs to be, but if I wanted to make a really thick and fluffy tassel, I would want it to be I would want to have a little bit more paper. Now, normally I would put a piece of tape right here just to give it a little secure close on that, but this is not a very thick tassel that we are playing with here, or our imaginary tassel, so I don't need to do that. I'm going to go ahead and cut this. And you can do it in more than one pass because of the way the paper works to hold it together. I'm going to cut it in more than one time because I don't like to hack my scissors. Even though it's still thread, I just don't want to smash them all at once there. Once I've trimmed that, you can see that this is not flush yet. So at this point, I just slide my scissors in. I make sure I use that paper as my guide, and I just trim right against that paper, giving it its haircut. And I use the side of my scissors to lay against the paper tube, and that makes it come out nice and level. And you can see here, looking sideways at it, that those are just about flush with the paper. I'll push down in there a little bit more and make sure I don't have anything protruding out the bottom of that and making it look fuzzy. And once I have all those little pieces trimmed, I remove my paper guide. You can generally slide it off. This is the telescoping I was talking about. If you slide it, you can see that would not be easy to cut against because you would cut into that paper. So you don't want that to happen when you're rolling it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to let it go. Roll it backwards, and there's the bottom of our tassel. Nice. So, however long you want it, you create it with your paper guide. There are 3 sizes to this Clover Tassel Maker. This is the smallest. And no, I'm sorry, I said 3 sizes. I beg your pardon. There's 2 sizes. This is the smallest, and then there's a large one. Now, having demonstrated that, the last thing I want to share with you are the ways in which you can finish the tassel or decorate the tassel, and we showed a couple of those to you. I attached this bell by taking just another piece of the thread that I used on the neck and tying it on. I attached the reindeer by using a piece of finger crocheted cord, wrapping it around, putting it through the charm itself and hanging it off the side. I was looking at some of the different charms that I have. You can use buttons. I pulled this one out. I mean, obviously the French with their guild about making tassels back in the day, and their fleur-de-lis, I thought this would be cute even. You could sew that button into the neck of a nice sized tassel. That would be cute. If I had a child or a friend who was a dancer and I wanted to make a tassel to adorn the zipper on their dance bag, I could attach a little ballerina to a tassel, and that could go as a pull on the zipper on the dance bag. So you're limited only by what you have on hand or what you can create in your mind. This little nautical charm, the wheel from a sailboat or some sort of sailing ship, could be attached to a charm, and it could go on a beach bag. Let your mind wander. You can create all kinds of things. So that is pretty much Clover Tassel Makers start to finish. I liked the way they demonstrated that earring, and they hung it underneath a pearl, and it'll hang in front of their ear and then the pearl. I thought that was really clever. Thank you very much for joining Country Stitchers and our demonstration on tassels, and we hope you'll join us with our next video. And as always, share the joy of needlework. Bye-bye.